The shelter stood at the far edge of the town where the road turned quiet and the buildings grew old. Mark drove slowly into the parking lot while Anna looked out the window and wondered if today would change their family in a way she could not yet explain. Lily pressed her face to the glass with excitement, while Sam sat quietly holding a small list of dog names he had written at home. They had talked about adopting a dog for months. Life had felt heavy lately, and the house felt too silent after long days of work and school. Mark believed a dog could bring balance back into their lives. Anna hoped it would teach the children responsibility and kindness. None of them expected the moment that waited behind the shelter doors. Inside the shelter the air smelled clean but tired. Dogs barked from behind metal gates and paws scraped against concrete floors. A volunteer greeted them and offered help, but Mark said they wanted to look around first. They walked slowly past each row. Some dogs jumped and barked loudly. Some pressed their noses through the bars. Some curled into the corners and refused to look up. Lily stopped near the last row. Her voice softened as she pointed to a large German shepherd sitting alone. The dog did not bark or move. He sat straight with his head high and eyes calm. His fur was thick but uneven, and there was a faint mark along his neck that looked old. He watched the family as if he were studying them carefully. Anna felt a strange pull in her chest. The dog looked strong but tired. Not weak in body but heavy in spirit. She knelt beside Lily and spoke softly. The dog stood and stepped closer without fear. He lowered his head and allowed Lily to touch his nose through the bars. His breath was slow and steady. Mark asked the volunteer about him. The woman hesitated before speaking. She said the dog had been found near an abandoned industrial area on the edge of town. There had been no collar and no chip. No one had come to claim him. She said he followed commands but only when he chose to. He had never shown anger, but he watched everything. They opened the gate and let the dog step into the small meeting area. He walked with control and awareness. He did not pull or rush. When Sam moved suddenly, the dog placed himself between the boy and the open doorway. His body was calm but ready. Anna noticed how the dog checked corners and doors before settling near the wall. He positioned himself where he could see everyone. It was not fear. It was purpose. Mark asked if they could adopt him. The volunteer asked if they were sure. She said large dogs with unknown pasts could be challenging. Mark looked at Anna and then at the children. Lily hugged the dog gently around the neck. The dog did not resist. He rested his chin lightly on her shoulder. They named him Rex. The drive home was quiet. Rex sat in the back seat watching the road through the window. Every time another car came close, his ears lifted. When they stopped at a light, he leaned forward slightly as if counting exits. At home, Rex walked through each room slowly. He sniffed the air and checked doors. He paused at the windows and looked out before moving on. Finally, he lay down in the living room facing the hallway and the front door at the same time. That night, Anna cooked dinner while Mark helped the kids with homework. Rex stayed near the kitchen entrance. When a pan slipped and made noise, Rex moved instantly, but stopped when he saw the children were safe. He did not bark. He did not growl. He simply returned to his place. Lily whispered that Rex felt like a hero from a movie. Sam said Rex acted like he had a job. As night fell, the house grew quiet. Rex did not sleep right away. He stayed alert, listening to every sound outside. A passing car. A distant voice. The wind against the fence. Only when everything settled did he lower his head. Anna watched him from the couch. She felt safe but also curious. She wondered what kind of life Rex had lived before finding them. She wondered why a dog like this had been alone. Later that night, Mark woke to the sound of Rex moving. The dog stood near the front door with his ears lifted. Nothing was there. No noise. No danger. After a moment, Rex returned to his place and lay down again. Mark did not sleep easily after that. The next morning, Rex walked Lily to the bus stop and sat beside her until the bus arrived. He waited until she was safely inside before turning back. Neighbors noticed and whispered about the dog with the serious eyes. Anna brushed Rex's fur and noticed small details. The way his muscles were balanced. The way he stayed still even when startled. The way he watched hands and movements more than faces. Mark decided they should take Rex to the veterinarian. Just a routine check. Nothing more. Rex followed him to the car without hesitation. As they drove, Anna watched them leave and felt a strange tension she could not name. She told herself it was nothing. Just nerves. Just a new change in their lives. Rex sat tall in the passenger seat. His eyes reflected the road ahead. Something about the visit ahead would change everything. Part 1 ends here. Mark parked the car outside the veterinary clinic and sat still for a moment while Rex watched the entrance with quiet focus. The building looked ordinary with glass doors and posters of smiling pets taped to the windows. Nothing about it suggested that the day would unfold in an unexpected way. Rex stepped out of the car calmly and walked beside Mark without a leash pulling him forward. People in the waiting area noticed the dog immediately. Some admired his size and posture while others felt unsure because of the intensity in his eyes. Rex ignored them all and sat close to Mark with his body angled toward the door. The receptionist smiled and asked for the dog name. Mark said Rex and explained that they had just adopted him. She nodded and handed over a form. Rex stayed still while Mark filled it out. He did not shift or fidget. His ears moved slightly at every sound. Dr. Lewis came into the room moments later. He had worked with animals for many years and believed he had seen everything. That belief faded when his eyes landed on Rex. He paused longer than usual and studied the dog from a distance. Rex did not react. He stood and met the veterinarian gaze without fear or aggression. His posture was balanced and controlled. Dr. Lewis asked Mark where Rex came from. Mark explained the shelter and the abandoned area where Rex had been found. The veterinarian nodded slowly, but his expression grew more serious. He invited them into the examination room. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of equipment. Rex jumped onto the table without being asked. Dr. Lewis noticed immediately. Most dogs waited for guidance. Rex acted with certainty. The veterinarian began the exam gently. He checked Rex's ears and eyes and teeth. His hands paused when he felt the scar along Rex's neck. It was clean and old and carefully healed. Not the kind of mark left by chance. Dr. Lewis stepped back and adjusted his glasses. He circled the table and observed Rex from different angles. He asked Mark if Rex responded to commands. Mark said yes, but only when he seemed to choose to. The veterinarian asked Mark to step back. He gave Rex a short command in a firm voice. Rex obeyed instantly. He gave another command. Rex followed without hesitation. Dr. Lewis' face tightened slightly. He asked Mark to wait outside for a moment. Mark felt uneasy but agreed. Rex stayed calm as the door closed. His eyes followed Mark until he disappeared from view. Dr. Lewis returned to his desk and opened a drawer. He pulled out an old notebook and flipped through pages. He compared notes and glanced back at Rex several times. His breathing slowed as understanding formed. He noticed muscle conditioning that suggested years of structured work. He noticed restraint in movement that came from training, not instinct. He noticed awareness that went beyond household routines. The veterinarian picked up the phone. When Mark was called back into the room, Dr. Lewis' voice was quieter than before. He explained that Rex showed signs of advanced training. Not for shows or sports. Something more serious. Something intentional. Mark felt his chest tighten. He asked what that meant. Dr. Lewis said it meant Rex may not be just a stray. He said dogs like this were rarely lost by accident. Dr. Lewis said he had seen similar dogs earlier in his career. They came from controlled programs. They were trained to respond under pressure. They were taught to stay calm and observe. Mark looked at Rex and tried to connect this information to the dog that walked Lily to the bus stop and slept near Sam's room. Rex looked back at him steady and loyal. Dr. Lewis said he needed to make a call. He said it was a responsibility, not a choice. Rex's ears lifted slightly. His body stiffened, but he did not move. Minutes later, 2 officers arrived. They spoke quietly with Dr. Lewis. Mark stood near Rex feeling powerless. The officers approached slowly and spoke in calm voices. One officer asked Rex to sit. Rex obeyed. Another officer asked him to lie down. Rex complied. The room felt heavy. The officers explained that a highly trained German Shepherd had gone missing months earlier during an official operation. The last known location matched the abandoned area near the shelter. The dog had vanished without a trace. Mark shook his head and said Rex was their family dog now. The officers said they understood, but protocol required verification. Until that happened, Rex could not leave with Mark. Mark felt panic rise. He imagined Lily's face when she learned Rex would not come home. He imagined Sam asking questions he could not answer. The officers reached for Rex's collar. Rex did not resist, but he shifted his weight and sat down firmly beside Mark. His body pressed close. His gaze never left Mark's face. The officers paused. Dr. Lewis watched closely. He said Rex's behavior showed clear attachment. He said the dog had already chosen his family. The officers exchanged looks and stepped back to make calls. Mark placed a hand on Rex's head. Rex leaned into the touch. Time passed slowly. The room remained quiet. Outside the window, the world continued like nothing had changed. Cars passed. People walked by. Inside, everything felt suspended. Rex stayed seated beside Mark. Calm. Unmoving. Loyal. Part 2 ends here. The room felt smaller as the waiting stretched on, and Mark stayed seated with Rex pressed close to his side. The officers stepped outside to make their calls, and Dr. Lewis remained near the desk watching Rex with careful interest. Rex's posture never changed, and his breathing stayed slow and controlled. Mark's thoughts drifted back to the shelter and the quiet way Rex had watched them from behind the gate. He realized now that Rex had not been waiting to be saved. He had been waiting to choose. Dr. Lewis finally spoke and said the officers were contacting people connected to the missing dog report. He said it could take time. Mark nodded, but his hands trembled slightly as he rested one on Rex's shoulder. Rex responded by shifting closer and lowering his head slightly. His eyes remained alert but calm. He showed no confusion and no fear. It was as if he understood the situation better than anyone else in the room. One of the officers returned and explained that records confirmed a German Shepherd with similar training had been part of a confidential operation. The dog had been trained to assist during sensitive investigations and had vanished after a transport failure. Searches were conducted, but eventually stopped. Mark asked why they stopped searching. The officer hesitated and said sometimes difficult decisions were made when resources were limited. Rex had been marked as unrecoverable. Mark felt anger and sadness mix in his chest. He looked at Rex and wondered how long the dog had survived alone after being left behind. Rex's eyes softened slightly as if sensing the shift in emotion. The officers explained that Rex's identity still needed confirmation. They asked Dr. Lewis to scan again for any hidden identification marks. Dr. Lewis examined Rex carefully and found a faint marking beneath the fur near the shoulder. It was almost invisible to anyone without experience. The marking matched the missing dog record. Silence filled the room. Mark felt like the floor had dropped beneath him. He imagined Rex being taken away and returned to a life he did not understand. He imagined the house without the quiet presence that had already become part of their rhythm. Rex remained still, but his ears shifted as the officers discussed next steps. When one officer moved closer again, Rex stood and repositioned himself in front of Mark. It was not aggressive. It was protective. Dr. Lewis raised a hand and said the dog behavior showed intentional choice and emotional attachment. He said removing Rex abruptly could cause distress and confusion. He argued that Rex had already adapted to a civilian environment. The officers listened, but remained cautious. One of them said protocol existed for a reason. Another said exceptions were rare. Mark spoke then. He said Rex was not a tool or equipment. He said Rex was part of his family. He described how Rex watched over the children and guarded the home without being told. He described the way Rex followed rules without force. The room grew quiet again. Rex turned his head slightly and looked at Mark. The look was steady and trusting. There was no command needed and no signal given. Another call came in. The officers listened carefully. Dr. Lewis watched their expressions shift. After a long moment, one officer nodded and ended the call. He explained that the operation Rex had been part of was officially closed. There were no remaining obligations tied to the dog. Since Rex had been declared unrecoverable and had since been adopted into a stable home, there were no legal grounds to remove him. Relief washed through Mark so suddenly that he had to sit back down. He rested his forehead briefly against Rex's head. Rex leaned into him quietly. The officer knelt and removed a small tag hidden beneath Rex's collar. He held it for a moment and then placed it in his pocket. He said Rex's service was complete. Dr. Lewis smiled softly and said Rex had earned peace. The officers prepared to leave. One paused and gave Rex a gentle pat. Rex accepted it calmly. When Mark and Rex walked out of the clinic, the air felt lighter. The sky looked brighter than before. Rex walked beside Mark just as he had when they arrived, but something had changed. Rex no longer scanned the surroundings with the same intensity. His steps were still confident, but softer. His shoulders relaxed. At home, Anna rushed to the door when she saw them return. She dropped to her knees and wrapped her arms around Rex. Lily and Sam followed and hugged him tightly. Rex stood still and accepted the affection with quiet dignity. That night Rex slept for the first time without positioning himself at every doorway. He lay near the family couch and rested his head on his paws. His breathing deepened as sleep finally took hold. Mark watched him and understood that Rex had carried responsibility for a long time. Now that weight was gone. Rex was home. Part 3 ends here. Morning light entered the house softly, and Rex lifted his head as the family began to wake. The house felt different now, quieter in a peaceful way rather than tense. Rex stretched and stood, then walked slowly through each room, not to inspect, but to simply exist within the space. Anna noticed the change first as she prepared breakfast. Rex did not stand guard at the doorway anymore. He lay near the table watching the family with relaxed eyes. His ears still moved at sounds, but his body stayed loose and calm. Mark felt something ease inside him as he watched Rex eat calmly, then sit beside the children. There was no urgency in the dog movements, only presence. Days passed and Rex settled deeper into family life. He learned new routines and small habits. He waited patiently while Lily tied her shoes. He followed Sam into the yard and lay beside him as the boy played. He rested near Anna while she folded clothes. Neighbors grew used to seeing Rex walking calmly beside Mark in the evenings. People stopped being nervous and began smiling. Some asked questions about where Rex came from. Mark only said that Rex had found his way home. At night Rex sometimes sat near the window but not with the old intensity. He watched cars pass and people walk by but his eyes no longer searched for threats. When nothing held his interest, he returned to his place near the couch. One evening Lily asked Mark if Rex remembered his old life. Mark thought for a moment before answering. He said Rex remembered, but he had chosen something new. Rex lifted his head, as if he understood the words. Weeks later the family took Rex to a nearby park. Children played, and people walked their dogs. Rex stayed close to the family and responded gently when others approached. He showed patience and control, but also curiosity. He allowed children to pet him and accepted treats politely. Anna realized that Rex was not losing who he had been. He was becoming more of who he was meant to be. One afternoon Mark received a letter from the clinic. It was from Dr. Lewis. The letter thanked them for giving Rex a home and said that not every hero needed to stay in service forever. Some earned rest. Mark folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer. Life continued with small moments and quiet joy. Rex learned the sound of the school bus and waited for Lily each afternoon. He learned the rhythm of the house and matched it naturally. Sometimes Rex would pause and look toward the distance as if remembering something far away. When that happened, Anna would sit beside him and rest her hand on his back. Rex would lean into the touch and stay present. The family never tried to erase Rex's past. They respected it without letting it define him. On a warm evening the family sat outside watching the sky change color. Rex lay in the grass with his head resting near Mark's feet. Fireflies blinked in the distance and the air felt still. Mark thought about how close they had come to losing Rex. He thought about choices and loyalty and how sometimes belonging was not assigned but chosen. Rex lifted his head and looked at the family gathered together. His eyes were soft and steady. He had served when needed. He had survived when abandoned. And now he belonged. The house grew quiet as night settled in. Rex walked inside and chose a spot near the family couch. He lay down and closed his eyes without scanning the doors or windows. For the first time Rex slept deeply without duty pulling him awake. The family watched him and felt something complete. Rex was no longer part of a mission. He was part of a family. The story ends here.